Hello. Can I get some thumbs up if you guys can hear me? Great. Thank you. Welcome to week number 6. Hope everyone's doing well. Midterms are going well. Enjoying the beginnings of fall. Tonight we're going to, it's a pretty dense lesson tonight, so you need something to help you stay awake. Definitely, you know, you want some coffee or a little tea or something. There's going to be a lot we're covering tonight. I also threw in a bit of a review. Um, and yeah. Oh, I got my glasses from Zenny Optical, and I liked them so much I bought 2 pairs. So, uh, quick icebreaker question. I have a coding music playlist. Do you guys have one? And if so, what do you like to put on the playlist? Curious. What do you like to listen to when you're coding, when you're working? 10-minute lo-fi hip hop, yep. Jazz, The Weekend, silence, absolutely. Soul music, white noise, yep. Sometimes I like to just listen to the rain. Tribal rain. Okay, that's not the rain I was thinking about. Um, Orchestra, yeah. Very good. Yeah, different coders I've come across like to listen to different things. It's it's interesting. I personally don't like listening to music with words because my brain can't process both words and coding at the same time. So tonight's agenda, I'm going to do a quick 15-minute-ish review session. We're going to talk about functions, and we're going to use functions with forms. We're going to talk about a new event. We discussed a click event and double clicks, but now we're going to talk about a submit event. And we're going to have a group activity and the group share out. We're not doing this. We will cut this out. Where's strike through's not here. Does anyone know the shortcut for strike through? I forgot what it was. But yeah, this is not happening. So, anyways, talk about feedback. I looked at the feedback from last week. The major grow is that there was only a 34% response rate. So that is actually the face that I made when I saw that. If you want me to continue making that face, then please do not respond to the feedback forms. I was very sad. The glows were that the pacing was good last week, no issues along those lines, so I was pretty happy about that. But if you guys have more feedback that you would just want to send directly to me or to the tech fellows, just let us know. We want this course. We have a few weeks left now. We want it to be absolutely wonderful and enjoyable for everyone. I know it's late at night, for a lot of you, so I'm trying my best to keep it lively. So first, we're doing a big old review. We're going to review HTML, CSS, talk about classes a little bit, and JavaScript. And I'm going to just start with a blank VS Code here. So everyone should be familiar with VS Code by now. I think what I'm going to do is So we have this welcome to week 6 review. This is an HTML element. Its tag is an H2 tag. It represents a section heading. Does anyone remember how many H tags there are from 1 to what? Very good. 6. Excellent. Just a random question. If you've memorized it, that's great, but H2, H1 all the way down to H6, and they shrink as the number goes higher. So now what I want to do, I think, is maybe add 1 second here. What we'll do is we'll change the style of an element when someone clicks a button or something, which is something we've done already. So it should be review for everyone. If there's any questions while I'm going along, ask those questions. I have the chat open in front of me, just ask away. So where did the share button? Go back to this. Okay, so what I'll do is that I want the background of the page to change colors when I click a button. So the first thing I need is a button, right? Button, I'll put click to change, and the button should have an ID of color change. Okay, that should make sense to everyone, I hope. We have a button, we click it, nothing happens right now because it's not configured to do anything, right? Um, let's say I want to change the way the button looks. How would I do that? I would go into my CSS. I can do ID or I can do button since there's only one. That's my selector. And maybe I want the background color of the button to be different. I can do background color. Maybe we'll make it blue violet. Okay. And maybe I want the button to have a different shape. I could do border radius, and maybe I'll do 20 pixels. I can see my button has a different shape. Um, the text is the same. Maybe I could do a different text font family, and I could do maybe Times New Roman, kind of switch it up a little bit. Okay, so now I have a button that's styled a certain way. Maybe I want it a little bit bigger. Let's change the width to 400 pixels, make it much bigger. And the height. That's a gigantic button. That I think is too big. Let's do 2. Okay, I have a square button now, right? So this is all review CSS, how you apply rules to an element, right? The button doesn't do anything. Oh, chat, chat. Yeah, just checking the chat real quick. I had it closed. The button doesn't do anything, right? How do I make it do something? What, now I need to use the JavaScript, right? So I jump into JavaScript and I do const button equals document dot get element by ID, element by ID. And what was the name of the button? I did color dash change, right? So now I have a button and I have it captured in JavaScript as a variable called button. And I want the button to change the background color of the page. So now I need to add an event listener, right? So I do button dot add event listener, and it should be click. Let me use the right quotes, keep it the same. And then I want to use my function here. I'm going to talk more about functions today. And what do I want to happen? I want the background color. Why is this? I cannot read properties of null. It's weird. Maybe because there's nothing in here. No. Button. Let's see if this works. Can button be named button? Yes, it can. What did I do wrong? Color dash change. Color dash change. Did I set the ID? Yes, I did. This is a good review because, oh yes, great. Thank you, Belinda. The reason it's not seeing it is because the script is in the head. It should be in the body. So the script, the JavaScript has no idea what this color change is because it's running up here. Thank you very much. Put it back down here, and now we shouldn't have an error. Let me click this out. Okay, no problems anymore. So now if I click the button, I should see a log in the console. It should say hello, right? Perfect. The button is working as I expect. And now what I want to do is change the background color of, let's say they change the background color of Welcome to Week 6 review to something else. So I'll go in here and I'll add an ID to the H2. Let's call it header. And I'll jump in here and I'll make const header equals document dot get element by ID of header, right? And then I can say header dot style dot background brown color equals, let's make it maybe, what's a color that will work here? Purple. Okay. So if I click the button, the background becomes purple. So this little bit of code basically captures everything we've done in the last 5 weeks. We did some HTML, we used an ID, we added some styling, and then we added some JavaScript. So any questions about any of this? If there's something you don't get, ask away, please. Otherwise, we're going to keep going into a pretty, there's like 45 slides tonight. So it's going to be fun. Okay. Everyone is good with this. All right. Okay. Hopping back to the slides. So tonight we're going to talk about functions. Has anyone who, can you just drop a thumbs up? Not in the chat, just on your screens or something if you've written a function before. Great. I see a few of you. Some people are like this, okay? Halfway function. It's just a reusable block of code. Um, Imagine it's very similar to a math function. You know, it's just it just expects things to be plugged in and then you can use them as often as you want. So here's an example of a function. We have area. The name of this function is area. It expects two parameters, width and height. and it returns width times height. Okay, so now if I want to call the function, I use this function call right here, area 83, and I expect it to return 8 times 3, which is 24, and in this case it would return a 30. So then area 1 in this case would be 24, and area 2 would be 30. Okay? Are there any advantages of using the arrow function syntax? The biggest advantage is that you look current. Um, Arrow functions are the most commonly used, I think, nowadays. If you see something that the other way, I'll show you guys, I can show you right now. So the other way you can write a function is actually just go like this. So let's say in this case, the function is, what was it called? Whoops. Area, right? So we can make function, um, wait, I don't even remember how to do it anymore. Function area, is that right? Yeah. So it's expecting width and height, right? And then return width times height. So that is how we used to write functions. We don't really do much of this anymore. Um, so there's no, I mean, the biggest advantage is just it's clear, it takes up less space. And then if I want to use this function, I can type in console.log area, and then just like we were doing 83, I should see it returns a 24 down here, right? Okay. Good question though. More examples of functions. This is a little addition, x plus y, it returns both of them together, summed up. Then you have a square, and it returns a square. And then you have something that prints the sum. So you do send it 1 and 2, and it returns 3 with the answer, with the text of answer. Okay? Pretty self-explanatory, I think, for you guys. Function syntax is very important. You have the const keyword to declare the name of the function and the function itself. Every function, not every function has parameters. Um, so in this case, the parameters of the function are width and height, and then you have your arrow, and then don't forget your curly braces. And you return, this is the definition of the function. In this case, it just returns width multiplied by height, also called the function body. There's different names, but that is the basis of every function of any programming language. They're all going to look something like this. Okay. Will you be condemned? That's a strong word. By employers or job interviewers if you use second syntax of functions. No, you will not be condemned. Um, but it's a pretty easy lift to just do it and use an arrow function. I don't think you're going to be condemned. It's good to practice using both because you're going to, if you continue a career in front-end engineering or any sort of software development, you're going to see both functions. So it's good to understand how both of them work. Yeah, so area is the name of the function, right? Width and height gives the information needed, which we call the parameters. And then the arrow shows the start of the function body, followed by the curly braces. Then you return the work of the function, um, which is the function body, right? So how do you call a function? I just showed you. It's pretty easy. You use the name of the function and you send it its parameters. What happens if you call a function and you don't send it any parameters? It will throw an error, right? If the function is expecting parameters, and the parameters should be the minimum the function needs to work, right? So for area, you must have width and height. Could you send something else, like the name of a shape? Sure, but you must have width and height to calculate area, right? So the cool thing about function is that if you if you have a function that returns a value, it replaces the function call itself. So here we have 8 and 3 passed over to area. It will be replaced by 24. So console.log 24, right? It will log 24 instead of what was there. This is a special thing you get if you have a function that returns something. I recommend, um, generally speaking, to have functions that return something, even if they're sometimes your function actually returns another function, which I don't think we're going to get to. This is a cool little tool to show you visually how a function works. So we have here, we have adds, this is what we have. Um, we have the same function, right? The name is area, the parameters are width and height, and it returns width times height. And so now we're calling the function here, area 83. If you don't call the function, it's never going to be used. You'll never see anything that it does, right? So if we step through, it'll go line by line. So it's taken the function and it's added it to the global frame and the function called area, and now it's stored in memory, and now it's running up to line 6, and it's saying call area and pass it 8 and 3, so we can see the variable 8 and 3 stored for width and height, and then it processes it, and you get the output of 24, and then you get the output of 30. Questions. Can you show the other one? Yes. Here's the other one. That's what it looks like. Can we write it as const area with height? Um, no, you cannot. Okay, so any questions about functions? In JavaScript, do we not have to declare the type of the function parameters? What do you mean by the type? Like the type of data? Like integers and strings and stuff? If that's the case, then no, you don't. Yeah, JavaScript is not a statically typed language, so no, you don't. But that's why it can also be confusing. Yeah. Just like when we create variables, we don't have to give the type. The same thing is applied to functions. Any questions about functions? So this, I think, one of these slides is very nice. Um, yeah, these slides, I think, do a very good job of explaining how a function works. And you should use these to reference when you're building your own functions. And this one is pretty good too. Okay, moving on to forms. Excuse me. So Facebook has a form. Actually, we can just look at it. If I go to Facebook and create a new account, right? Here's a very simple form that Facebook has that asks you for your name, your last name, your birthday, your gender, and then number or email and a password, right? This is the same form we're using in this. So the question for you guys, what is the purpose of this form? And what different types of data does the form collect? And then not only this form, but think of all the forms that you guys see on a daily basis even. What do you see forms collecting? Looking for interesting answers. Obviously, forms collect names, um, email addresses. Forms generally, yeah, user input, personal data, strings, all of your answers are great. Social security numbers, um, address, data about the user. I think forms also collect file uploads, essays, birth dates, excellent, signatures, emails, yeah, very good. So a form that we see very often that you may not know think of it as a form, but it is a form, is like an input field when you put a comment on like an Instagram post. That is actually a small form because you put in your text, then you submit it, and then it goes and it shows up at the bottom, right? Um, Even I could say that uh, putting like a Twitter post is kind of like a form too. If you post something on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, um, you fill out some information, you press submit, and it goes into the uh, world of Elon Musk, right? So all these things are forms. There are forms everywhere. It's a section of a website used to submit information. Reddit is just a bunch of people filling out forms, right? Every Reddit comment is a form filled out that's you press submit and it's submitted into Reddit. So forms are used to collect user input. Here are some examples. Some of you guys mentioned these appointment reservations like dates, payments, quizzes, sign up for a subscription, giving feedback. All this stuff is collecting user input. HTML forms are used by, surprise, surprise, a form tag. And then you can put all of these different inputs as part of the form itself, checkboxes, radio buttons, submit buttons, and many, many more. And it's important to match the input type to the data needed. You do not want to see someone put their name for the birthday field, right? Because that's going to mess up your data. And there are ways to prevent that from happening. So a form element allows the user to enter information. Here, this is not the actual code of the Facebook form. It is way more complicated than I guess it needs to be. If you go and inspect it, you can see here, this is the Facebook form itself. It even starts with a form field. Let's see, let's go up to here. Here's your form. Can you guys see that? That's probably very small. So you can see the form tag opens, and then you have your inputs. You have your first input type here, which is actually a hidden input. So Facebook is collecting some data that we don't know about when you submit the form. One of the names is JA, I don't know what that is. The other one is LSD. That is really weird that they're collecting LSD when you submit a form. Then you have uh, form box and you have your full name field. And then I'm sure there's first name right here, right? And it has a placeholder, et cetera, et cetera. So let's look at this from here. This kind of simplifies it. First name, last name. So each form field, this input type is text. Each one has an ID. And then in this case, they also put in placeholders. So placeholders are there to tell the user what you should type in, because we assume all of our users of our apps are 4-year-olds. So you have to tell them, put in your first name, please, put in your last name, please, mobile number or email. Let's keep going here, right? Birthday. This is a good example of how to put in a birthday. You don't want an open field for a birthday. Have them use drop downs. Make sure you get the birthday right. And then you have these radio buttons for the gender. And the last piece you have is a sign up button, which submits the form. Okay? Any questions, comments about a form as we continue to look at them? We'll be applying a form to our projects tonight. So how do you handle input? We're going to talk about that. Is there a specific format or date for the value field that we need to follow? Mm, I think that question will also be answered as we keep going. I've heard that overcomplicated web design has less traffic than web pages that have less elements. I would agree with you there. How can you make a section to be required to be filled out? We will talk about that too. So, so here's a very simple example of a form element. You have your form tag, you have your label. This label puts this little first name up here, right? And then input type text, this will create this box in HTML. We can just use our code here. Why not? So if I want to make a simple form, I'll do form input that works, right? Input type text. Input, cool, interesting thing about the input tag, it has no closing tag. One of the, does anyone remember the other HTML element that has no closing tag? Yeah, line break, good example. And image, very good, Juan and Jose, and I will try to pronounce your name, Asmita. And I just thumbs up so you can validate that I pronounce your name correctly. And then we talked about label, label for name, and then you can do first name, just like we just saw. Okay, back to comment. What kind of codes do they for? Restrictions? That's all that you can do all that in JavaScript. So let's say you want to restrict someone signing up because they're too young. You can do that with JavaScript because they put in, let's say you can say year, if year greater than 1980s, 80 or something, right? Then it'll work, otherwise it doesn't. That's how those work. So how to make something required, you just add required to the input. It's an attribute. It doesn't require anything but the word itself. So you just type in required. That's what it would look like. It's not going to require anything because I haven't put any submit here. So that's why that doesn't work, but that's what it looks like. Okay, moving on. There are tons of input types. You have text, you have number, email, right? Email does some level of validation on its own. If you submit something that doesn't look like an email, the browser is going to be like, this is not an email. Date will, that depends on the browser, but it should open a calendar. You have radio and a checkbox, and then you have buttons. So input type reset will have its own button, and input type submit looks like a button too. So we can try one of those. Input type submit. So now if I click this, it should say it's required, right? It doesn't submit. Why is it called radio? Do you guys even know what the radio is? Um, it looks like a radio button. If you ever remember, if you remember what a radio looks like, it looks like a radio button. Yeah. I think I was watching a video today and the the interviewer was asking random people, what how old are you if you're considered old? Like what year are you born before? And the majority of them said the year 2000. And I cried. So we have submit event. Um, these two slides are really good too. Slide number, what is this? 32 and 33. Yes, I am Unc. 100% Unc here. And um, Useful input attributes are great, and the input type. So if you're ever like, well, how do I make that thing that I saw? Come back to this slide. I highly recommend Mozilla um, Developer Network for web documents and just documentation on HTML, JavaScript, CSS. Great resource. Um, Mozilla does amazing work, but let's see, HTML5 input types. You can see everything here and examples of it. Um, and it's just very nice, very nice. Okay, so we've built the form. Now it's time to submit the form, right? How does that work? When this input type submit is clicked, JavaScript creates a submit event. And then we want to write code that reacts to this event. So it's actually funny that we want the first bit of code that we often want to write is to prevent the form from refreshing the page. Every browser, when you submit a form, is expecting the form data to go somewhere and for the browser to be told to go to a new page. In JavaScript, we want that to not happen, so we prevent the default action from occurring. And then you select the form element, and then you use the event listener like we used before, and we take the data from the form and send it somewhere or do something with it. That is essentially how it works. So first example is you want to print to the console when someone submits. So let's walk through this code together. We have a function. It's expecting an event. It's logging the form was submitted, and it's preventing a default action from occurring in the browser, right? We have the form itself. We're selecting it. We're collecting it in form. And then we have the event listener added to the form. When you submit, run this function log submit. And it says the form was submitted. Okay. Now, how do you collect? I mean, this is cool, but it's useless, right? Because you're not collecting any of the data that's in the form. We want to collect the data. So we have the event running again. We're preventing the default action from occurring. Now we're getting the element by ID, which is in this case the HTML. Um, the HTML has the ID that, let's go back here. Let's say the input type text ID is actually fname, right? Fname. So bouncing between slides. Fname.value will give us our user's name, which is Octavia, and Octavia submitted this form, and again, we're preventing the default action from occurring. I would probably write this code in a different way, maybe in a different order, but this works as well. Okay. The next stuff, the next bits are actually bonus from last week. Some people were asking how to add an element to HTML using JavaScript. I'm going to go through this. Uh, if you have questions, just hold off. If you have a question, ask it in the chat, and I will talk to you guys. I'll find you in the breakout, and I'll answer your question there. But to create an element in JavaScript, it's actually really easy. So if you want to create an element, the key here is create element. And in this case, we're creating an H2 element. And then what do you want in the H2 element? You say founded in 2021. And then you take a div. You have to append the element to something. Maybe it's the body of the page, right? The root div, or the root element, right? But in this case, you're finding a div on the page and you're adding that element by using append child. to that div itself. Okay, so why don't we can do that. What time is it? 7:40. We have time. If I want to create an element, right? So on specs, we'll just do the same thing. Document dot create. You can also create an attribute for an element, which you should definitely check out. Which choose. And then you want to say text.inner HTML, and that text is dynamically made. This is happening again. Text.inner text. Whoops. Sorry about that. Still an error though. Oh, that's why. Okay, better. So maybe when I press the button, it'll append this text to, let's move this up here. And we will append it to the body of the page. Right? And that will be, oops. So now if I click this, I should get some text that was dynamically made by JavaScript. And then similarly, you can do the same to remove an element. Let's take that out. And it's as simple as you select the element, wait, sub, oh, remove the one that you made earlier. But you can also use this to remove an element that you made in HTML by doing document.getElement by ID and just doing a dot remove on that. Or you can also change the styling and you can hide it. Do we need to create the element first? Yes, you do. Why inner HTML? Is it because it's connected to, yes, that's correct. Does dot work like the dot operator in Java? I'm not sure what the dot operator in Java does. I haven't used Java in years. If you can tell me what it does, and I can tell you how it works. Okay. So any questions about functions, forms, class.method? Does JavaScript work like that? Yes, it does. That is why you see here that we do console.log. We also do body.append child. Same situation. Can I explain slide 39 again? I'm sorry, yes, I did go fast tonight. Slide 39, yeah. So we're creating an element and we're assigning the element we created to the variable of text. And then they're using the word customize, sure, but right now it's an H2 tag without any words inside of it. Okay? Where I don't see you on the screen. So we change that from looking like this in HTML, right? If you just create an H2 element, it would just look like this, right? And then we change that to founded in 2021 or whatever it said. If you click again, yes, it does add more, or it should. Um, Sorry, I got distracted. Then you need to append the element to its parent, and you can declare what the parent is by assigning it. So I'm doing a query selector div here to find a div in the page, and then you assign it to this div variable, and then you append the text, which is up here, the h2 element with founded in 2021 to that div. And by append, it means that you put it inside. It becomes a child. So if you have two divs, remember that if you use query selector, it's going to find the first one. That's why, generally speaking, you shouldn't use this. You should use get element by ID if you're going to do something this way. Great question. Okay. Okay, if there's no more questions, you should hop into tonight's activity, um, which would be, whoops, not unit two. Tonight's activity, we will be making a, I skipped it. You're gonna make a song request form for an online radio station. So the minimum requirements are having a requester name, a song name, an artist name, and then the submit button. Okay? She'll work on this together. Driver, navigator, situation, um, if you'd like, if it's helpful. And then I think hmm, I think you should just do this. Write the name and requested song to the console. So you have the name of the person that's requesting, you have the song name. So Lisa requested Woman by Doja Cat. So then just do that much and I think you should be good. Uh, and we're not going to do the thing where you submit the link and all that stuff. I'd just really like you guys to get through this because you get to practice a lot of what we learned so far um, in class. So hop over to the activity and you will see a guide on how to do everything here. So let's put a 20 minutes on the clock and we will break out. Actually, make it 2021, please, Ian, if you can. Thank you. All right. Um, I saw, I stopped by a few of the groups, varying levels of progress. The rest of tonight is really just project work time, and then we'll wrap up. Um, so what you do in your project time is, I think like the last few weeks, you guys have been continuing, some of you have been continuing working on the activity together, and that's totally fine. No, you don't need to submit a screenshot. So do that or apply what you've learned to your project, which is what the um, tonight's project goal is to create a section for a petition. So people sign a petition. Then in order to sign a petition, they need a form, right? Then you add their name using this append child, which we talked about, to the web page with their name and their hometown. So you can take the JavaScript that you've written, that your group has written, um, just modify it a bit to get it going in your project, uh, or uh, keep working on the activity together, practice using JavaScript. Um, it's really up to you how you use the next 35 minutes of class time. Yeah, you can change your project topic, no problem. Uh, if you've, decided to change something, something new came up. I think what you develop with your project is a good thing you can show to potential employers, put on your resume. You should kind of keep that in mind as you go along. There is no milestone due for next week, so keep that in mind too. Um, which says it here. The next one isn't going to be until November 4th. And no, it's not a new project. You should be working on the old one and apply what you've learned. Okay? So any questions? Any questions I can answer here? I tried to stop by the groups and see, but I can't obviously stop by like 40 groups. So do you have questions about forms, about JavaScript, anything along those lines that we can talk about together before you go back into the breakout rooms? What is the difference between the reset and the style? Great question. So, um, oftentimes we use a reset because every browser interprets what is in the HTML a little bit differently. So a main thing you'll see in the reset is a margin zero auto. So if I add a margin which is applied to the entire page, and you'll usually see it with an asterisk, and you'll do like a margin zero auto, right? And what that's going to do is that's going to close, every browser adds a margin to the body itself, okay? And as advanced HTML developers, we do not want that. We want to add our own margins and do things the way we want it. So a reset does things like this and basically resets the browser to remove anything it has by default. Yeah, it removes browser-specific default stylings. Most of them, but not all of them. Different, like Safari has its own font sometimes, right? It's a default font that's different from Chrome or different from Firefox. Okay? Event.prevent default prevents so if you submit a form with this submit button, my form submit button doesn't do anything yet, but if you submit a form, the browser automatically refreshes the page. And event.prevent default prevents the browser from doing that, so you can continue to run the rest of your JavaScript code. Okay? If we change our project topic, do we have to go back and redo them? No, you do not have to go back. We want our values to stick there itself. I'm not sure what you mean, values to stick there itself. If you can clarify that question, that would be great. Keep sending questions. I'll try to answer as much as I can, and the tech fellows are here too. Well, your questions are helping everyone in class, so Okay, if there's no more questions, let's oh, more questions came in. How do we use Git with what we are doing now? Hmm. Is there a Git? There must be Git in this because Microsoft owns GitHub. There's a way to do this. I'll look into this and I'll answer that question after breakouts. Can you persist text input when the browser page is refreshed? You can in different ways. Just to answer your question, normally this data would be saved in a database, right? And then the database would show it. You could also save it in a cookie um, in your browser itself. And if you want to figure out how to do that, definitely the cookie way is the easiest. Obviously, you don't have to make a database to do that. Um, yeah. So I think that also answers Vinay's question. Um, I noticed the label tags in our activity use the for attribute. The for connects the label with its um, buddy. So input type, if this should be ID name. So the label connects this with this. And these should always match the for and the ID. What about using an autocomplete attribute? Um, what is, yeah, you can use that. So that would allow you to use your autocompletes that are already there. So yeah, that would be good to add to your petition so people can put their names in with autocomplete. I was trying to make the footer in a way they hide when scrolling up. That's a bit too specific for me to answer here, but I'll hop in your breakout room to answer that. Okay. I could not find the wrench icon. What wrench icon? Um, someone's on my end at once. For the oh, okay. This is a gear. The console actually popped up by itself. So if you close it and then you run, it just pops back up. So if you have any console logs that run, the console opens by itself. Okay? So we'll close the questions there. I will hop into um, a couple of rooms to answer specific questions. Can we put 25 minutes and you guys can work on your projects? Um, or if you want to continue working together on the activity, that's totally fine too. And we will go from there. Okay, I answered the right question for the wrong person. So Salahuddin asked how to use Git. Let me share my screen real quick. But you can use Git in VS Code by adding the Git extension and the GitHub extension, and then it'll ask you to log into your GitHub account. Then you can start moving your code commits and stuff to GitHub and use Git if you know how to use Git. If you don't know how to use Git, you should learn. It's useful. So you'll have to sign in with GitHub and then you can connect your accounts. It shouldn't be too hard because GitHub and Microsoft are one company. Okay. Where did the chat go? Any other questions as we wrap up for the night? All right, there's no office hour to justice. Sorry. 4 p.m., 7 p.m. is canceled. This one's out. Fix that. What is the purpose of this line of code? Great question, Adriana. Script, yeah. It connects the JS file. It allows us to use JavaScript within the HTML. So this code actually runs this file, which is over here, right? And this file contains all of our JavaScript. So without this, if I take this out, keyboard, elite keyboard users, shortcut is Control question mark to comment out any line. If I comment this line out, none of my JavaScript is going to work because I'm not calling the JavaScript code. Yes, it should almost always, I mean, for our class, always it should be at the bottom of your script, out at the bottom of your body. Um, so within the body, but all the way at the bottom. If you did not do well in a previous milestone, you can resubmit, I believe, up to 2. So, okay. So definitely look into that. And as far as I know, it will not have a negative impact on participation. So resubmit your milestone if you did not do well. Any other questions? There's no survey tonight, is there? Oh, there it is. Okay, session survey, please, you guys, 34% from last week. Can we get 60, please? 60%. Session survey, fill it out right now before you, and then say, just type a bye in the chat and we'll call it a night. Are we allowed to get feedback? Don't say bye unless you filled out the form, please. Thank you. Thank you for bumping. Thanks, Brian. Done by. Perfect. Awesome. Good night. Good night. Do you fill out the session survey every? Yes, each survey for every night is different. Good night. Good luck on your exams and dinner if you haven't had it. Bye bye. Good night, everyone. See you next week. Great point, Juan. Next week is Halloween week. I'm just putting that out there. Interesting things might happen. Juan might turn into a cat. Oh, yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute. Ask away, please. Juan is a cat. We accept questions from all creatures. Just know that if you ask a question as a cat, you need to speak in meows. All right. I think we'll call it a night. Thank you, Tech Fellows. Have a good night, everyone. See you next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Likewise,
Have a
you guys
great
have a
night.
good night. Have a great night.
Thank you.